Okay, so obviously Druid has changed a lot with this update. The Alag is now on CA rather than on Spirits. We lost quite an amount of boon generation from Spirits. Like previously, having Stone Spirit AFK on the group was already 100% prod uptime. And like now we have to actually work for all the boons. Do you think there's anything else that's changed that other than those two things?
I mean, I think quite significant is the way we use our pet swaps and pet abilities now.
Yes, because we got the new trait Invigorating Bond. The trait was there before, but it got changed, right? And now
we
it's
actually use it now, yeah.
Useful. Because previously we were locked into Nature's Vengeance so that we actually could provide a lack with spirits, but now like the trait is kind of like we're not locked into any of them. Though I would say that Invigorating Bond is by far the most useful out of the three.
Yep, for sure.
And people are complaining a lot now that this makes it so that we don't use our skills for what they are doing, but rather we use them for providing boons. So for example, rather than bring pets that are useful for CC or for Aegis or for immob or whatever else, we cannot use them that way anymore because we have to press it off cooldown to actually upkeep the protection and vigor. What do you think about this statement?
I mean, it's exactly the same issue as before, right? We're taking some piece of utility that we had and we're now using it for a different purpose. Like, before it was the actual utility skills that we blocked with our spirits and couldn't use, and now it's our pet abilities. The whole issue has just shifted to someplace else, so yeah, I would agree with you.
Yeah, but I actually disagree with this because...
Oh, really?
Yeah. This is not push druid build. This is actually what I ran on Zira today. So the way I disagree with you, Nika, on this is because I think that this is not our only protection source. And we can forget about Vigor because like we're not gonna give 100% Vigor uptime anyway. And I know that a lot of people are gonna disagree with me. A lot of hollows are gonna cry at me that they want their Vigor. But Druid cannot provide Vigor anymore, guys. You have to just accept this fact. You're not gonna have Vigor. And because this isn't our only prot source, I think it's just like it's one of our prot sources, right? As long as we bring more prot sources, the more of them we bring, the more leeway we have in when we press them. So if we bring, for example, Stone Spirit, Heal Glyph, and another Glyph, then we have 4 prot sources between our pet trait, the 2 glyphs, and stone. And those 4 prot sources overcap prot by a lot because 2 of them pressed off cooldown are already enough to upkeep protection. And that allows us to actually press them for what we want them for. Because that means we just need to like use one of them at the start. For example, let's say on VG, I want to use my Glyph of Rejuvenation, the heal glyph, when the green explodes because it's super quick, nice, huge healing to top everyone off after the green explosion. And I want maybe stone to actually Aegis myself from the blue because I'm tanking, there is probably only one blue under me, so I can actually block it with Aegis, which is super useful because I need to stand still for my CA5 to provide might and luck, right? So maybe I want to save my stone for the blues. And then I have like one more glyph. I actually ran Unity on VG today. I'm not sure if this is the best option. I just wanted one glyph that would be like an additional protection source just in case. And I thought that Unity would be nice for the more healing it provides because VG is quite a high damage pressure fight. So because there is no CC bar on VG in the first phase, I decided to start the fight with pet F2 to give protection because I know that I will not need it. And that way I can save my other glyphs and my stone spirit for when I need them shortly after, because pet F2 gives me enough protection to last until I cast my glyph after the green, right?
Yep. No, that's true, and I would agree that having multiple sources for a boon is very good design. Like Chrono was when it released, right? With multiple sources there and so on for its elegant quickness. I definitely like this. My issue here is that it's not the only trait that makes use of the beast skills, right? Like we have Invigorating Bond, and we have Rejuvenation, the very first trait in nature magic given as a region.
Yes.
And I personally think that Spirited Arrival, the trait that you take instead of Windborne nodes very often now, is kind of mandatory in my opinion, especially after the buffs we're getting in 3 weeks.
Why do you think it's mandatory?
Which limits our region uptime. Okay, no, it's not mandatory, but I really like having this trait because it gives us insanely fast might ramp up.
But even without it, the might ramp up is quite quick. Like just pressing Warhorn 5 and pet swapping for the lesser Warhorn 5, as well as placing down Sun Spirit, is already huge might.
It's already 20, yeah.
It's already 20, and then you just need to go into CA, and you start with CA4 anyway. That brings you to 25.
That's fair.
Like you don't
it's
need
more comfy and just faster. But yeah, it's true. We do have our options there for sure. Yeah.
I just think that honestly, I don't like not running Windburn nodes because I don't know, we've run this trait for so long that it's just sort of my habit that Warhorn gives regen, right? Like with this trait, Warhorn gives regen, and without it, regen comes only from my heal skill due to the Wellspring trait, and from rejuvenation, which is the
first one,
pet F2, right? So if I want to, for example, like save my healing skill until later in the fight and save my pet skill until later in the fight, because I will actually need them like very soon after fight starts. Like for example, what would be a good example? Let's say Deimos. You're pre-stacking boons for the pre-event. You don't want to use your pet F2 because you want to use Jacaranda immob on the Pride, and the Pride you would usually immob after the group takes the green and not before that. And you don't really have the time to cast your heal skill because you're already trying to like pre-stack as much as luck as possible with your CA skills. Probably there's a better example than this, but this is like the first one.
It works, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that having Windburn nodes is actually pretty good because you want to cast your Warhorn 5 in your opener always, anyway, for Might and Fury and Swiftness. So I just feel like compressing that regen instead of like having to press another button in your opener onto your Warhorn 5 is pretty good. And I don't think that Spirited Arrival is necessary. Fury is fine because we get perma Fury uptime from Lesser Warhorn 5 and main Warhorn 5, right? Like even
Fury
main
has been a
Warhorn...
non-issue for a long time, yeah.
Yeah, even main Warhorn 5 with Alacrity is already on its own permanent uptime, as long as you're pressing it off cooldown. And with the lesser one, it is absolutely never an issue. And the free might Spirited Arrival gives, honestly, I've been... I tried a Druid rotation on the Golem. Obviously, not every boss is on the Golem. Not like a Golem, right? And you delay some skills, etc. But the thing is, I got like 23 to 25 might with just like a Golem rotation without the Spirited Arrival. And I know that we were just talking with the rest of QT about how we can get more might, but those 2 stacks, I think we can count on any boon support to provide that much. Like 5 is the absolute minimum that boon support provides, like quickness DPS provides, regardless of what quickness DPS class it is.
I think Spirited Arrival gets more interesting when you have a boss where you have to move more and cannot channel your CA5 as often as you want to.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because not being able to move during that skill, it doesn't feel good. I really don't like using CA5, to be honest.
Yeah, I really don't like it either. But like, the thing is that CA5 is actually very good for Alacrity, because unless the tooltip is wrong, it is your highest range skill, because it's 360 according to the tooltip. The only other skill that is 360 is your CA3, but this one obviously gives like only 1 stack of Alac instead of CA5, which gives 4, right?
No, that's true, yeah.
Not to mention CA3 has a very long cast time. You would like CA5 to give boons at target again, not around you?
That was great. It was never intended, right? It was a bug.
That somehow worked out in our favor.
Yeah, that was great.
But yeah, like, I think it kind of depends what other quickness support you're paired with, because in this full clear, I was paired with a quickness chrono, and I felt like even without using CA5, might was pretty okay without Spirited Arrival.
Yeah, it usually works out, right? You often have something that gives might, but you would like to be able to give 25 as a, 100% boon duration support.
Yeah, obviously.
I honestly must say, I don't mind Druid in its current state that much. It's just, I have no better word than weird. Because...
Yeah... Go on.
It pretty much does what old Druid did. Like...
You mean like the very old Druid when we were giving
like
Grace
Druid,
of the Land?
No, I mean in terms of the result that you get from the patch before, right? You maintain Alec, you maintain Might, you have the strongest healing in-game still. It was shifted a bit, like you had a bit better healing in CA before because of the CA2 spam. Now you have the Invigorating Bond and the stronger regen. Like, yeah, it's still the strongest healer in the game, right?
It is. It absolutely is. Like, we cannot argue that any other healer can heal more than Druid.
Druid definitely deserved a nerf, and I wonder whether this rework was aimed to be a nerf or not.
But really, the way they changed the Druid in this patch, it sort of feels like if you were already a good Druid player, it didn't change anything for you. It's mostly like Fermi is saying in chat, the people complaining that you cannot give a luck now, or that you have to spend your CA for giving a luck instead of for actual healing, and that you should be able to save your CA for healing. I feel like those people just never played Druid right.
That's true, but like the biggest change that we're seeing, and why I think we're seeing all these complaints, is because it did get tighter from your timings, right? You have
Absolutely.
less freedom, which probably should not be the case when you're running 100% boon duration. But as said, a slight nerf here and there, and giving you less ability to do things was probably deserved, or is deserved.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why I don't quite understand the follow-up changes we're getting in 3 weeks, because then most of these issues will no longer exist, right? Well,
Yeah.
most.
I mean,
We still have the Celestial Avatar issue, but
yes,
aside
I
from that,
think
yeah.
I think the current issues with Druid are essentially, one, we don't get enough CA generation on bosses with no aura. Like, you saw me play in the full clear, right? On bosses like, for example, SH or Sabir, I never had to even think about how much time I'm spending in CA and how much of it I'm draining, because I always had it back by the time it came off cooldown. The only problem is something like Conjured Amalgamate or something like Ice, you know, one
Oh
of the
yeah, I didn't even
statues.
think of Ice. I went through some of the bosses earlier and like kind of placed them in a bit of a tier list, and like the events I didn't even consider.
Yeah, Trio as well, really.
Yeah.
It's
I,
like all the encounters that have 0 damage pressure.
what
Where
Sorry, go ahead. I would
it's
go
all
after.
the encounters that have 0 damage pressure, where you really feel the struggle to get CA. And I was wondering if we could maybe, on such bosses, fill the last slot with some sort of damage skill that does a lot of hits, or run, instead of staff, run, for example, short bow or some other weapon that has lots of hits, to generate CA for dealing damage rather than for healing.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. I mean, I feel like on bosses like CA, you might not even want to play a healer, to be honest. If your team is really not
Well,
taking any damage, right?
yeah.
It's certainly a good idea. Like, I don't know, taking an offhand axe or something on a second set, right?
Mm-hmm.
What I've been doing is do things like standing in my own Sabbather flag shots to just,
I've been trying to do that on Sabbath today. I feel like it helped a little bit, but
it
I
it does help a
still,
little bit. I dislike it because it incentivizes bad gameplay, right? You want your
yeah,
team
of
to like
course.
feed a little bit, or yourself, just to like get that missing CA, which doesn't really feel great.
How do you feel, Nika, about this idea Linka has been proposing lately all the time, that you could generate CA through giving boons? Because I'm liking this idea. Like,
Yeah,
give us
it
a little
sounds
bit
good.
more CA generation every time you apply a boon,
That sounds really good in PvE,
but
but it
not
would have
in
to
the
be split
competitive
because I
modes.
mean,
Yes.
you go into a competitive mode, you get like, I don't know which trade line is, like protection on dodge and give yourself all these boons, and then yeah,
That's
like
wilderness, right? Wilderness
yeah, I
survival.
think yeah. It would have to be split very aggressively, like
Yeah, I think
0.1% in competitive modes or something.
I
Yeah.
discussed this idea with Subi earlier, actually, when we were on a walk, and he said that, because I don't really play PvP or World v World, but he said that Druid already generates too much CA and is too OP in competitive modes, and just like unkillable, and Jacaranda with now all this bleed, in addition to all the immob that it was already doing, is really, really, really strong and just Druid is too OP in competitive modes right now. So giving it even more CA would be very, very bad.
Yeah. Maybe we could get a skill that actively damages our pet. I mean, I guess we have guard, right? But if no
We
one
do
takes
have
damage, then even our
guard.
pet doesn't take guard. So we need more like getting more CA would be a very good fix to make Druid feel a bit better, right? I think we can agree
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah.
But the implementation on how
We absolutely should be able to generate more CA somehow, because like what they took away from us is our spirits being there and constantly losing health.
Yep. Yep.
And we could heal them, which meant that we were getting CA through healing. And as you can see on my screen right now, you generate twice as much CA through healing as you do through dealing damage. So being able to heal our spirits was actually huge for our CA generation. And now that they aren't something that you spawn, like they don't have health, they don't lose health, you just like sort of cast them and they work more like wells than spirits. We just lost so much CA generation from this, and we were given a little bit of generation on this trait, Natural Mender, where every 3 seconds we would gain 5 energy in the past, and now we gain 8. But you can see now, if I drain my CA, well, I don't even need to cast anything, but just spamming 1 out of habit. If I drain my CA completely, you can see how very slowly this charges back. And this is what it looks like on bosses where there is no aura damage, because people aren't taking any damage, so you cannot heal anything. And like generating it through damage, it matters the amount of hits, right? And we don't have actually that many fast hitting abilities.
It's funny, if you don't attack and don't heal, it would take 39 seconds for your CA to recharge, just with the passive trait.
Yeah,
Quite a long
so
time.
we wouldn't even be able to upkeep a luck, right? Because
Exactly,
you can
yes.
only stack 30 seconds of it.
That is, in my opinion, certainly the biggest issue. And then we obviously have these, well, is Might good enough, is Alec good enough issues for, that like have to be looked at. I don't even think they're that bad.
They
You
really
mentioned earlier
aren't.
the range of CA5. I would like for us to have a bit more range on the
Absolutely,
boon
because
application parts of our CA skills, to be honest.
yeah, you remember,
And
Nika, that like, sorry for interrupting
yeah,
you.
go on, yeah.
Like they actually changed this on other classes. Remember how STM Chrono for giving quickness used to have like a really tiny AoE around the
Yes, yeah.
Mesmer, and ANET was like, no, we need people to give boons in higher area. And so they buffed the radius on quite a lot of classes. I think it wasn't just STM Chrono. I think it was more than that. They added bigger range, bigger radius on the skills or traits that give quickness or a luck, because they didn't want them to be so tiny. And now we have Druid, where we have 360 on CA5 and 360 on Lunar Impact, which is the same as our Spirits were, but our Rejuvenating Tides are 240, our CA2 is 240, and they, thank God, actually buffed CA1 to 240 as well. But
Yeah, if that was still, it was 120, right? If that was still
it
this tiny,
was.
it would be unplayable.
But
Yeah.
you can see the AoE on my screen. This is a very tiny field for giving such an important boon as a luck.
I must say, as a Druid player myself, I would much rather have our boon application be very free, but the healing output, I would really like to see the healing output nerfed. And so it matters more how I use my healing skills and when especially. I think that's a way more interesting type of skill expression as a healer. compared to just, well, being busy giving boons, right?
Yeah,
Which
yeah,
is why
absolutely.
changing
Because
the range in which you can give allied but not healing. I don't know if they can even uncouple those two or not, how that would work.
they probably
I
can,
would love to see
considering
that.
there exist skills that have different radius for different parts of them. For example,
Warp 5, right?
if you look at Glyph of Equality, it is a 600 stun break in CA for 5 people, but it is
Yeah.
only 300 or I think 360 maybe. I don't remember which one. Either 300 or 360 stability application.
Yeah, similar to Warhammer 5, right? Like it has a very large range of 900 for the boons, and
For
then
the boons, and then a tiny range
yeah,
for
tiny
the
for the
CC
thing, yeah.
it does, right?
Yeah, like 240 range, yeah. Have to be pretty close. I really like that.
Yeah. I think that what you said about wanting less healing but more boons, I think that would be very good because, like you said, skill expression. It is not difficult to heal when we have so much healing, but like you know, back when I started playing druids, I actually struggled with, I don't know, healing people up on VG after a green. But now I find it completely brainless because obviously I have multiple years of experience on Druid now. And Druid has so much healing, it is absolutely insane. It's not difficult. You just save your glyph, you make sure you're in CA, and both subgroups are immediately topped off.
Yes.
If you took away some of this healing we're doing, then but made applying boons easier, then we would focus less on actually upkeeping the boons and play more proactively. Because right now I feel so overwhelmed with like, I want to give stab for this mechanic, Aegis for this mechanic. I want to save this skill for CC. I want to use this skill for CC. But these skills that I want to use for those things are also a huge part of me upkeeping boons. And I need to think whether I can actually delay them for the things I want to use them for, or whether the boons will drop if I do that, and how do I maintain the boons while still delaying the skill. Maybe I want to use something earlier, another like, I don't know, precast pet F2 because I know I will have it back later for the boons from it. So it's a lot of thinking of like, how will my rotation of giving CC stab Aegis line up with the boss mechanics in such a way that I also provide prot, might, and all the other necessary boons. And honestly, it's very difficult to think about and not something you can figure out for every group immediately. It's like every group will have different phase timings, and you can't really predict what your phase timings will be. And
Yep. That's a very important point.
like, you have to sort of just try it out and then correct your rotation, but then you go into another group, what you figured out doesn't matter anymore. And
we really lost the ability to play reactively on so many
and
things,
this is
right?
what I'm getting at. We lost the ability to play reactively because if you think about it, if boons got easier to upkeep and we had to just think about, I want to give stab at this point, I want to give Aegis at this point, I want to give CC at this point, and I want to give healing at this point. Even if they lowered our healing output, we would still, it wouldn't change anything because we still want to save our burst heals for certain situations. But it would help us sort of how do I say this? Think less about the boons and more about actually playing proactively and giving people what they need at the right time, be it healing, stab, Aegis, or CC.
Yes. um, I feel like a few wounds are in this meta are just meant to be permanent, right? Might, Fury, Alacrity, Regen, these things that the Druid provides should be, but they're just passive in a way.
Yes.
And we have very few wounds that actually are meant to be used actively. We have
Yes.
Aegis, Stability, and Resistance, which Druid has now gotten, which is kind of nice. There are not that many applications for it, but it's nice. And so yeah, I feel like planning around when you need to use Aegis, Stab, Resistance, and NCC, and incorporating, like planning your rotation around these things is good design in a way
Yes.
that you have to think. While it's not that good that you have to actively think when I'm giving the other boons, right?
Yes.
And then healing is also like some healing has to be passive, like or happen regularly because we want to out heal ticking auras and so on, right? And some other healing we want to actually plan when do we need to use our big burst healings, right? So
yes. Yeah, because we want to have to think about when do I use my Aegis stability CC healing, but we don't want to think about, on top of that, how do I also maintain prot, might, fury, etc. while doing that? Because no other class has to think about those things, or at least I don't think they do.
I think it's similar for other supports, right? But not quite as like Druid just in its versatility does a lot of things and covers a lot of mechanics, which is why we think about all of these things, right?
Yeah. Yeah, go on.
I think I was done with my point. I'm
Okay.
just not quite sure what what the exact purpose of this rework was, right? If it was an intended nerf or not. But in my opinion, it feels too much the same. I mean, you've said this earlier, I think, on Lagos, where you were like, "Oh, I'm playing Druid exactly the same way as I have been before," right? Like
Yeah,
the same
exactly.
thought process, right? I'm like, was it supposed to be a slight nerf? Was it literally just to get Alacrity off Core Ranger? So I don't know, or yeah, I don't quite understand. Which is why I'm saying
I mean,
Druid still feels a bit weird to me now, but I will get used to it.
I think Linkasam did pretty well. They wanted to remove Alacrity from Spirits because of spam X skill type to give Y boon. But then you have to spam pet skill to give prot, spam every glyph to give prot, spam every CA skill to give Alacrity. They fixed an issue and created 3 of them.
Yeah.
So essentially, they wanted to give Druid more versatility, I think. Because people were complaining, spirits are annoying to manage. You have to bring spirits for Alacrity, so you cannot bring any other utility skill. So you are locked into them, and this is not fun. And I think this complaint was what Einat heard, and they were like, okay, we've got you. We don't want classes to have one type of utility skill that you just spam off cooldown regardless of what it does for quickness or alacrity. Because they've done the same to Spectre, so you don't have to spam Wells anymore, to Scrapper, so you don't have to spam Gyros anymore, to what else is there?
I mean, kind of Chrono with the Wells, right? Kind of.
Kind of. For Alacrity Chrono specifically.
Yes.
Quickness Chrono didn't work like that, but for Alac Chrono they did. So, and Herald facets for quickness as well, right?
God, no. Yeah.
So they tried to get rid of this spam X utility type, regardless of what they do, for quickness or alacrity. But this issue really boils down to the fact that they're trying to sort of tack those boons onto classes that were never meant to actually have them. They weren't designed with them in mind. So, of course, when you try to like tack a boon onto a class later, tack a build onto a class later, you don't end up with a good design. Do you agree with this, Nika?
Very much so. I started playing 2017, right? Like
Yeah.
just as basically Chrono was the only Alec and quickness giver. And then but like Firebrand and Renegade were freshly introduced basically. And I missed this very supportive design of Chrono and early Firebrand, where you have all these different quickness and alacrity for those classes just felt natural because you had so many traits that interacted with that boon, right? You really wanted to have it, and you had different ways of giving it, and it felt natural. And over time, I think Renegade was the first. Oh, we only have the class mechanic and the one Grandmaster trait that gives the boon, and that worked very well for Renegade specifically. And
It did.
they just adapted this for other classes now, right?
But it worked for
It happens more and more.
Renegade. The reason it worked for Renegade was because Renegade already had a skill they would use for
Yes, yeah.
Alak, and the trait would just make the skill give more Alak.
Yes.
And I think that design was very good. Because it also allows for, I don't know, some other fun things that you can do with the class, right? You can have a DPS Renegade press a 4 of cooldown with no boon duration when your Alak Source dies, so that you have at least some Alak on your group after your Alacrity player is dead. Like, that is something that is actually fun to a degree.
Yep, I very much agree. I very much share this sentiment of the class kind of has to be built for it, and would like that. And it would take a bit more time into reworking every single class, like I don't know, one class every six months, and doing it properly, introducing alacrity or quickness to them, and then also
Yes.
sticking with the plan, right? Like Druid has gotten alacrity exactly 1 year ago, and now it's been reworked. Same for Warrior. Warrior actually went through a couple of reworks to have its quickness, and Alec now.
Yes.
Yeah, I would rather them take a bit more time with each class individually and make it feel more natural. And funnily enough, I felt like the spirits actually always, or like we've always taken spirits on Druid, right?
Yes.
So it felt natural to be on the spirits because they're just spirits are basically Druid class identity at this point. I would say, like,
we used to
you
run
still take spirits.
spirits.
I mean, you still have 2 spirits on your bar, right? That's one less than last patch. It's like
Yes, like we
we're not
used to
getting
run
rid of them.
spirits originally for the unique buffs they gave, right? Originally, Frost gave you more power damage, Sun made you do additional burning, etc., etc. It was actually something that buffed people in a unique way to Druid. Then they got rid of those all unique buffs because they wanted to be like, oh, we don't want to bring the class, we want to bring the player. So we don't want unique buffs because we don't want to force people into specific classes that they want to bring. And so they got rid of that and instead made spirits give boons. But we still brought them because we still needed those boons, right? And then they, on top of that, threw a luck onto the spirit, which was very good because like those were spirits that we were running anyway. It was a skill that we would be bringing on the build anyway, and it felt natural to have a luck on that.
Yep, it just made sense with how much synergy spirits had with Druid, with the CA region as well and stuff.
Yeah.
And especially you could precast it, which I've seen you do on Karim today, and then you didn't have quickness, and so you got way less Alec out of your CA than without than with quickness. That's
That
a
is
very fun thing.
another that is another issue actually. But wait, there was something I wanted to talk about. Oh, yeah, okay. So the next thing I wanted to talk about when it comes to Druid is, so we have this Grandmaster trait that gives alacrity, right? We have to bring it as a Druid, as a healer,
Yes, yes.
because what value is a healer that doesn't give alacrity or quickness? But
None,
then,
yeah.
yeah, but then we have Lingering Light, which is the healing trait. And what build is this for?
It has to be, I don't know, World by World or something. Because they very clearly themselves are impacting the meta, right? They're kind of forcing this double heal with a boon, 1 DPS, boon support, DPS support, and 3 DPS meta, right? This is kind of what they have outlined in their balance manifesto thing, and with how little access to protection and might and so on there is, and all of these boons getting shifted to healers in a way, it is very much clear that healers are expected to bring Alec and quickness and all of this stuff.
Yes.
And so it either has to be just a roleplay fantasy thing, or it's for different game modes, right?
But this is
Which is a bit
not
sad.
but this is not the only case,
Yeah,
right? Because
same for Tempest, right? And
yeah, we have the same on Tempest.
yeah,
Tempest was such a great healer. I absolutely loved Heal Tempest in the way that it played before it got alacrity. Because, okay, let me log onto Tempest right now so that I can actually show the traits. Tempest, in its old days, revolved around auras. You would have all those shouts that apply auras. Do I even have like, I already have like the fixed build, I think. I don't even know what this is. Okay, so you would have like skills that give auras, like fire aura, magnetic aura, shocking aura, etc., etc., frost aura. You would have all those skills that apply those auras. And then you would also bring this trait, which would give you yourself an aura based on your attunement, but then you would share it through the powerful aura trait, which would share all the auras that you get to other people. And then in the other trait line, so either air or fire or earth, depending on like what you needed your auras to be, there was the trait that would grant boons to allies that you grant auras to. So you would use this for Fury and Swiftness in air. You would use it for Condi Cleanse. Where is the trait? I actually don't remember. Here, you would use this trait in fire, where applying auras to allies would remove conditions. So you would bring this for Condi Cleanse. And then in earth, you would give protection on your auras. So you would essentially choose your trait lines based on what you needed the most out of Tempest and buff all of your auras, which then would also heal people. So you would buff all your auras, give them, and then heal people through giving them. Because guess what? Tempest is a class that circles through attunements and it only has healing in water on its weapon skills. It doesn't have any healing on weapon skills in other attunements, right? So you would mitigate that issue of like you only heal in water by healing through auras that you could also make in other attunements. But now the entire build is just gone because everyone has to take the stupid alacrity trait and you cannot heal on auras anymore because the traits compete with each other. Do you think this is good design, Nika?
it depends. On Tempest, I don't think it's good design, because currently Heal Tempest just does not heal enough, right?
Absolutely
You
not.
really need that extra healing. On Druid, on the other hand, we've already talked about this. We actually have almost
too much healing.
output,
yes,
right?
yes.
So bringing more, what's the point, right? Like,
yeah.
we've briefly used a Lingering Light Druid during HRP whenever we had a Staff Mirage, because we already had the Might, we didn't need Grace of the Land, right? So,
But we didn't need Lingering Light ever for the healing.
we didn't need it. It was just, okay, we can bring more healing, we just do it because whatever. But yeah, so it's a bit weird. But as I said, there's no way ever that you would use these other heal traits as long as there's a boon to give. So
Yes.
I don't know.
And like the chat is saying, for Tempest, the way you give auras, or give alacrity, would make the most sense on the auras. Like we were already playing so hard into the aura buffing and making auras give different boons and heal and whatnot. Why not just have a trade that doesn't compete with this one, the healing one, that would give alacrity on applying auras? And then the class would actually, one, have enough healing, and two, be very interesting to play.
What do you think about a class having two different Grandmaster traits that both give Alec that work differently? In case of Tempest here, you could have it on the Overload and on the Aura Share with a bit of healing attached.
I feel like that would be interesting because you would use the one on overloads, maybe on a DPS Alak, and then the healing one on a heal Alak. That would work.
Yeah, I think it would be interesting at times.
But then again, the problem becomes the competitive modes, right?
I feel like that can be fixed. They have been doing this thing where certain classes in competitive modes don't give quickness or Alec and give a different boon, right?
Right.
So I don't know. They just would have to be willing to split skills further,
Yes.
which I'm always a huge fan of. And I'm also a huge fan of splitting CA generation between PvP and PvE.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh,
CA
yeah,
generation
inviting me to the
should
Golem
be.
area.
I mean, we just happen to be in the same aerodrome instance, and I just wanted to go back to the golem in case we want to show something. But yeah, I think that the main issue right now is that they are trying to balance for 3 different modes at the same time, right? Because, for example, I had this amazing idea of, do you know how I personally would like Alak to be given on Druid instead of what we do now? I was thinking about it last night, and my biggest issue with the current Alak application is that we used to be able to, let's say we have here in the middle a boss, yeah? Let's say it's Karen, and you stay like here, attacking the boss. And now I as a druid want to kite the boss auto attacks away, so I want to stay like here. And we used to be able to do this thing where we just dip into the group, press our spirits for a lag, and then go out again to once again kite the boss auto attacks. And that way, both the group and the druid had a lag. Now, if I want to do this kiting thing on Karen, and I want to like spam a lag on the group, I'm out of range of it myself, and the group has perma lag, I have none. Well, in practice, it's not as bad. You saw the burn up time on Karen, I think I still had like 70%. But it feels really bad on bosses like tanking Doom, kiting on Doom, tanking on QTP, tanking on Kadim 1, kiting on Sabatha, all those bosses where you want to stay a little bit at range at some point used to be fine with the spirit application of a lag. You would just go into the group, press them, everyone has a lag, you can move out again. But now, with the way CA works, you cannot do this anymore. So I was thinking, what if we gave a luck on CA enter and exit plus pulls a luck while in CA? So we give like, I don't know, let's say 3 seconds base a luck on enter, pulls with 100% boon duration, 1 second of a luck every second, and then give like 3 second base on exit. That way, we would just need to make sure that we enter and exit CA on the group while also staying a little bit close when we pulse it while we're in CA. What do you think about such an idea?
Alec numbers almost sound a bit low.
Yeah, maybe like not 3 but 5 would be a little bit more reasonable. Because I've heard people saying that, like, you know, I've spent some time in the Ranger channel on a sea help desk, which might have been a mistake because I lost a lot of sleep over that, over arguing with people.
I've read your Discord last night, or like this morning rather.
Right.
And yeah, there were some messages there indicating that.
So people there have been arguing that you could pulse a lag in CA. But I feel like that would have exactly the same issue as we have right now. You would still have to spend a lot of time on the group, like being in rend, right? So that wouldn't solve anything. There was even one person who had this weird claim that we should pulse a lag out of CA.
That's interesting.
In such a way that we actually drop a lag when we go into CA to punish us for having to go into CA to heal people.
That's very interesting.
I was reading that and I was like, what are you on about? Do you want to just delete the class mechanic?
That's very creative. It honestly sounds good.
My idea, you mean?
But I don't necessarily mind the current implication, minus the range, and maybe the duration. But hey,
I mean, the duration is definitely getting extended, right? Right.
After
Fixed,
the patch,
extended after the patch.
It's so free.
So it's just the range that's an issue. And Linka wants to know, where would you put alacrity on a skill instead of a trait that gives alacrity to all CA skills?
That's a good question. I mean, honestly, I would probably rework one glyph into giving a big chunk of Alec.
Yeah.
Maybe put Alec on one of the CA skills.
Glyph of alacrity.
Yeah, that sounds great, right?
Unity would be a good candidate for that, right?
Yeah. It doesn't really do anything except heal a bit more, right?
Yeah, and we already, like we said earlier, we overcap healing by a lot.
About your earlier point with the being able to only briefly go into the team and then out again. And basically having an easy time kiting.
It's a bit overpowered, isn't it?
Yeah, I was wondering, do you think Druid should be strong at doing this? Because the Mechanist was nerfed, right? In this way, they have their mechanical genius debuff going on.
Yes, they have increased cooldowns now, right?
Yeah.
If they are at range.
Exactly. Tempest kind of can do it, but it also needs to go into group very often, and also if you're running the Warhorn setup, you don't have the long range healing, right?
Yeah.
And also Firebrand is not like the strongest ranged healer and has to go in, right? Like,
yeah.
Maybe it's even more balanced if the Druid gets punished for actually kiting, right?
Well, yeah, that's why I was thinking that maybe it is like actually fine. And because like if you yourself drop a lag, does it really matter? I guess it matters a little bit for the
Yes, it does.
boons,
You
right?
dropping quickness and alacrity really matters, actually. Which is why I also was thinking that I would love it if they adjusted the range threshold on Lead the Wind, one of the marksmanship traits, from 1.2k to like 600. So you, as a druid, could actually keep up some quickness whilst being out. That would be fun. But nah,
Mm-hmm.
it's really weird. Like we would all love druid to be more flexible, be able to do all of his boons from range and so on.
Yeah, and
But the
being like
question is
the
that balanced, or is that part of what makes druid overpowered? Right?
yeah, because like we're so used to Druid being the strongest healer and the way to go if you want to roll compress and you want something that can, I don't know, tank on Kadim the Peerless, give boons to the group, heal the
Yes.
group, be able to heal the kiters from range, be able to res from range, and see the anomalies on top of that. Like, this is
Yep.
absolutely insane roll compression.
Being able to do all of these things makes druid very fun to play because we have
Yes.
so many things to pay attention to do, and we can do them without being punished for them, right? It feels amazing. It's exactly the support fantasy. But at
Yes.
some point we have to realize maybe it's a bit too strong.
Yeah. Maybe it is a little bit too overpowered. But then again, I personally very much enjoy trying to figure out ways to actually do that. Even if, for example, now it's harder than it used to be, it's fine because that's just more challenge for me.
Yep, for sure. But sadly, after the patch, we will once again be very much unleashed, right? After the
Yeah. Yeah.
follow-up patch, and we'll be able to do most things. So yeah, I
Paula
don't know.
actually brings a good point that dropping a luck on yourself makes it harder to know how much a luck your group has, which is annoying.
Yep. As a heal player, I would love a different UI where I can see my entire squad and then my party separate, right? Like the party list window and the squad window and stuff to see my uptimes
Yeah, because
in
on
game.
one hand, we have the grade view on squad, where we can actually see boons and conditions on everyone in your subgroup. But then there is issue with that because we don't see ready checks and we don't see the health of the other subgroup. And if we're the only healer in a 10-man squad, being able to see the health of the other subgroup is very important, as well as being able to see the down states.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of want the squad view so we can see everyone's health bars, so we can see the ready checks. Those are also important. And so we can see the down states. But on the other hand, we really want to be able to see boons and conditions on our subgroup. And honestly, I would love if someone made an ARC DPS plugin that would do what the grid view does, so showing you boons and conditions on your subgroup, while also being in the squad normal UI.
That's interesting. Yeah, that would be lovely. Basically, just an overlay, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
that's cool.
basically just like a
That would be
little
cool.
overlay
Mm-hmm.
that would show what boons, even just boons, not even just condies. The condies would be useful too, so you know when to cleanse. But even just seeing the boons would be very nice. I think now we addressed most of the things I wanted to talk about. Yeah, we talked about CA generation being an issue. We talked about alacrity duration being a non-issue, but it's getting buffed. So even where it was an issue, it will no longer be an issue. We talked about prot and all the other boons. We talked about, I don't know, Druid being OP. Is there anything else that changed that feels to you worth mentioning?
Sword. We got the new sword, and I actually really like it.
We got sword, which now has 2 leaps. I don't actually own... Actually, I do own a sword. We have now 2 amazing leaps, which is like super huge mobility. Because before, one of the sword skills would push you backwards, right? So you had to use about face if you wanted it to go forward.
I really like the new sword 3 to dodge things like Veilguarding Greens without having to move and so on. It really comes in handy. It's a bit tricky to time, but it's really nice.
Because it is an evade.
I should greens, VG blues, yes. Thank you, Paula.
I should actually very much consider using that on VG.
I cannot recommend using it to entangle a Reto. That hurts.
Right. Have you tried that?
There might have been some incidents.
Right. But yeah, the evade is huge. That also means that we could potentially run it on Zira for Blurred Frenzy as well, at least partially. Because I think I actually want to face tank some of it to generate CA.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's a nice little thing.
Yeah. Does chat have any questions? Because I wanted the stream to also be an opportunity for everyone that does play Druid and feels very lost with the new build to ask us questions about really anything.
Linka, please don't bring up DPS Druid. I'm not a fan.
I had quite a lot of fun playing the PS Druid for a bit, but I think it shouldn't have been a thing.
I was really hoping that, well, we could run a really nice Celestial Druid doing 20-something DPS, very little healing, and still providing our boons.
But we cannot provide all boons. That is the issue.
Yeah. That is something that Mechanist just does so much better, right? You have your Selimech, it does your... It even does like 25k DPS, like depending on how much DPS you bring and how little healing, right? You can always scale these things a bit.
Linka Alacrity is not the issue with Sally Druid. The problem is that, I don't know about Sally, I've tried Seraph Druid that has 100% bleeding duration. Seraph is a stat that is the least banned option because there isn't really anything that has like good stats. Because Seraph it has precision, which is absolutely useless on a Condi build, right? Because it has Condi damage, concentration, healing power, and precision. The precision really feels out of place there. But you can cap bleeding duration if you use the bleeding duration food, the bleeding duration sigil, and obviously Cratons. And that way, you actually heal quite a lot because obviously you have healing power. It's not as much as normal Druid, but it is a decent amount of healing. And it provides perma alacrity, at least on the golem, from what I've tried. I haven't tried the build in a real raid. It could be a nice off healer to use as like a second healer in groups that don't feel confident to solo heal. The problem is the build maintains about 10 might.
Yep, that's where the issue comes in.
Okay, let's go through the other questions. Skirmishing instead of marksmanship. I think skirmishing is fine if you don't need the CC on a marksmanship, because marksmanship obviously has the moment of clarity trait, which increases the amount of CC you do. But with skirmishing, you gain quick draw, even though you lose the lesser Warhorn 5. And with quick draw, you can quick draw your CA4, which actually helps you with might and alacrity. And it helps with might enough to make up for the fact that you're not running lesser Warhorn 5. The only problem is that ramp up is slower, and you actually need to play around quick draw well. And I feel like that is something that not many druids do nowadays, because druid hasn't really used quick draw, or at least I hasn't used quick draw ever since Spotter disappeared from the game.
Yep. And you cannot use your CA2 before your CA4 has finished casting. That is very unintuitive. Because
Yes.
your CA2 will eat your quick draw proc.
So you need to be careful about that, but if you feel confident enough that you can play around quick draw and actually quick draw the right skills, I think skirmishing is still viable, but I would say it's less value than marksmanship. Do you agree with this, Nika?
Yep, very much. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay, another question. How do you correctly time F2 for CC? Wyvern CC has been weird at times. Wyvern takes a while to spawn the field, right, Nika?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the CC itself is a little delayed, or is the CC instant and the field only is delayed?
Honestly, I don't try hard my pet CC that much. I just wait for the bar to appear and press the thing. If you want faster activations of your F2 skills, put your pet on passive. Because the pet will always finish its current action and then kind of do the skill. And yeah, if you put your pet on passive and you press the skill, it will immediately start casting. Which is very helpful when it comes to playing White Tiger, especially with the H's.
Yeah, but you can also mitigate the issue by pressing F3 before F2. Because F3 will...
You can cancel, that cancels your pet's thing, and then,
That's what I've been doing. Every time I want to cast F2, I press F3 first to interrupt the pet, whatever it is doing, because F2 does not interrupt its skills, right? Another question we have, do you think Druid has issues with any other boons aside from Alak, keeping up Prot, Regen, Vigor, Might? Vigor is impossible to upkeep unless you spam F2 of cooldown and bring Water Spirit. But the other boons are not an issue. Right, Nika?
Might is the questionable one. It is more than enough. Might is completely fine. But it could be a little bit more to be comfortable. Like it feels like you're doing more for the same might as last patch, right? So
of course, it got nerfed, right? So of course we're doing more for it. But most quickness providers provide enough might to give us a little bit leeway.
Yeah, no, it's fine,
Another person is asking why I'm running Remorseless versus Predator's Onslaught. It's because for most bosses, I'm tanking, I'm in Minstrel, I don't care about my damage, and Remorseless is a trait that gives more support than Predator's Onslaught, because Remorseless does not have an ICD. It doesn't have an internal cooldown, which means that because you have the opening strike minor trait, which gives vuln on opening strike, when you give Fury with your Warhorn 5 and with Pet Swap, the lesser Warhorn 5 on Pet Swap, you actually trigger this twice, and then also once because you have it at the start of the fight, as you can see on my puffer right now, which instantly does 15 vuln at the start of the fight. And I know that vuln hasn't been an issue for a very long time now, but I think it's still nice that at the start of the fight you immediately give 15.
Mhm.
I think it's just more worth to have it, considering that all three options are kind of useless. So this is like the least useless out of the three traits.
One should be a dedicated role like Quick and Alec. You know what? I actually don't disagree with that. Well,
Really?
I do think that, I mean, we have 5 boons and conditions that really impact DPS, right?
Mm-hmm.
Alec, Quickness, Might, Fury, Wooden.
Yes.
And um, what we were told is that Fury, Might, and Wooden would just happen passively, right?
Yes.
And Alec and Quickness would become proper set roles.
Yes.
Wooden and Fury mostly just happens, right? Like
Yes.
in most botcoms, whatever you play, you will have Fury and you will have 25 Wooden. But some classes just make 25 Wooden happen, and other classes like Warrior have very, very little access to Wooden, which I think should probably be reflected in their benchmarks, like in the amount of damage they can do. And similar for Might. Might is just, I mean, we've talked about it all evening and so on. Might is a real issue in the game. It's the way Might
Yeah.
is, yeah, it has, the game has to be balanced around the ability to give Might or not, if not everyone is giving Might. So yeah.
Like Einat has been saying for the past couple patches that like might they want it to be a boon that you are in a squad of 5, 10 people, whatever, and might just happens because everyone provides some. But the truth is that while they've said this multiple times and many people believe that this is what happens, it is not actually what happens. We're still not there. And this is why we had the discussion about might earlier in QT, because we were severely lacking it in our folk layer, in the non-druid subgroup. And this is why we think it's so important to be able to provide 25 on a healer, right?
Yeah. I actually think it would be very interesting if every class, literally everyone, had the ability to make changes in the build to bring a little bit of might, bring one skill that shares a couple seconds of quickness or a lag or something, and you literally don't have one big support that does all of it, but like you have at least the option that your team can just work these things out, right? Be it might, be it won't, be it anything. I think that would be
So you
very cool.
essentially want an equivalent of like stacking P Chronos for quickness or stacking Blades runs for quickness,
Yes, exactly. But
but
everyone does it.
everyone can do it on any class. So
Yes.
instead of
Yep.
like stacking one class to share the boon, you stack multiple different classes that each bring a little bit of the boon.
Yes, exactly. I think that would be kind of cool. And it doesn't have to be, right? You can still say, hey, okay, I'm going high bone duration, I'm taking the skill and something else, and I'm doing all the quickness or might or whatever. Or you can say, hey, everyone's like giving up one of their utility skills or whatnot, and everyone makes it happen together, right?
Yeah.
I really like
But do you think that would be healthy for pugs?
no,
I
it wouldn't,
think,
which is why it should be optional, right? And
yeah,
I mean,
I think in
that's the
pugs you
thing.
would still
It's
run
like,
dedicated support, right?
yeah. It would obviously be a more, well, trial
Okay,
thing,
we
which
have,
is why it probably won't happen. But yeah. What
and
do you think
then
about our um, beast skill traits having an ICD?
I think that is insanely difficult to keep track of.
Yeah, I agree. Do you think the boons on that trait should be lowered in duration and the ICD removed So we can just, whenever we have a pet that has an F2 up, get those boons.
Yeah, I think if you have the duration, the duration of the boons and remove the ICD, it will be much easier to play around.
And we won't use it much more often anyways, right? Because our pet skills have very long cooldowns.
Yeah. Wait, the owl has no cooldown. Then maybe it does need an ICD, but maybe it needs like a shorter ICD. Alakon CA is perfectly fine with the right numbers. You went into
Yeah.
CA from Might before anyway. Yeah, that
It
is
is
true.
with the right numbers, exactly. Yeah.
And even the current numbers are fine with like enough thinking about what you're doing. You can upkeep a luck easily. But once it gets buffed in 3 weeks, we will definitely have so much more leeway and Druid will become really easy to play compared to right now.
Mhm.
Nika, I won't keep you longer. You are free to go to sleep. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for discussing Druid with me, Nika, and have a good night.
It was fun. Thank you for having me. And yeah, have a good evening. Bye bye.